with the rain and there was a lot of leaks in the buildings. I got a note from our HOA team saying that we have no water or sewage. A lot more money spent on that. And in the end, we did end up having to pay the fee. Raw, unfiltered conversation that I should have had with you a long time ago. And finally, I am doing it. We're going to talk about the truth and the dark side of purchasing, pre-sales, and real estate in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I'm going to share with you my story. I'm going to share with you all the things that have happened. And at the very end, I'm going to share with you my honest opinion about it all. So if you're someone who is considering retirement in the Bay of Banderas and you are thinking of purchasing real estate here, whether it's pre-sale or resale, this video will be valuable. This video is not my regular type of content. It is a raw conversation, and it will probably be longer, but I hope you stick around until the end to find out my true feelings about investing in Vallarta, retiring here, and the process along the way. Let's get started. Friends, my name is Elena, and I am a fellow investor. I live in Puerto Vallarta full-time for the past 4 years, and I own 3 properties here. I show pre-sale opportunities in the Bay of Banderas, which I find to be incredible deals. And today I want to share with you some of the things that have happened to me. I'm going to share with you my story in hopes of helping you make the right decision. And this video is a reaction video, if you will, to many comments that I've been seeing on Facebook lately in terms of, scams that are happening here, all the things that can go wrong with pre-sales and even resales. So today I'm sharing with you my story, what had happened, and at the end I'm going to share with you what do I truly think about buying a property here in the Bay of Banderas. Let's get started. So let me take you back to the winter of 2021, January 2021, when we first moved to Puerto Vallarta, and I was starting a brand new chapter in my life and our family's life. And the one thing I knew for sure is real estate, because I used to sell real estate in Vancouver, Canada for over 8 years at that time. And I've also had some investment properties that I rented long term. So I knew I was going to buy properties here to help me get started with my new journey, my new career. And the first property we bought was a pre-sale property. It was pretty much completed. So it wasn't a pre-sale that hadn't broken the ground yet, but there were a lot of finishing work to be done. When we went to visit the presentation center, we made the decision really quickly. I was trying to find a real estate agent that could answer my questions and was having a very hard time prior to visiting this property. So when we saw the property and there was a great opportunity, I decided to jump on it. And we were told by the developer's representative that we don't need to get our own legal advice. They had in-house lawyers. Everything was basically provided by the developer. Because I sold real estate in Vancouver, Canada, and pre-sales the process is pretty similar everywhere else. The developers will have a team who represent them, and they will explain to you many things about the development and possibly even some things about the contract. However, their loyalty lies on the side of their client, the developer. I knew that. That is universal, whether you're in Canada or in Mexico. So even though I couldn't find a real estate agent who could help me, I knew we needed to hire our own lawyer. And the whole process was so confusing because even with my experience back home, I couldn't understand, the difference between the lawyers and the notaries and all of that. But slowly I started to research and dig into it. We've made an offer at the same time, and we did hire our own lawyers who were able to review the contract for us. And even though most contracts here in Vallarta will be presented in Spanish and English, I still needed to understand the Spanish side because if anything was to go wrong, the Spanish version of the contract would prevail in court. Number one thing I want to highlight here is that when you visit a presentation center, the developer's team, they work to represent the developers. They represent their interests. And if you're walking in to their development, you are coming in unrepresented. So you need to be prepared, number one, to represent yourself, or you need to find someone who can truly help you. And at this point, if you walked into the development and you are ready to make an offer, I highly recommend hiring a lawyer that you trust, because a real estate agent, an experienced real estate agent, wouldn't be able to help at this point because they're not going to be paid for the deal. So, and just to be clear, most developers are honest business owners who are doing their best and they're doing their job. And by having a representatives who they hire and pay, they are simply conducting business, right? So it is up to us, the buyers. So it is, in that example, it was up to me to make the decision of how I'm going to go about protecting my interests, right? And I chose to use a lawyer. I am so glad I made that decision. Let's fast forward to the completion time. The completion was late. And that is completely normal, because that is also universal, whether you're in Canada or US. Most of the pre-sale developments are usually delayed. That's to be expected, and that's something that should be stipulated in the contract and explained to you by your realtor or your lawyer. So I knew for a fact that we would be late getting our keys, and in fact, we were late getting our keys. Fast forward to a few more months later, and the way that things work here, you don't actually get your title until much later in the process. Now, this is where interesting things happen. And without getting into the legal side of things, because I'm not a lawyer and I couldn't advise on any of that, I'm simply sharing my experience. Funny thing happened. Those of us in the building who had their own representation, their own lawyer or realtors with lawyer connections, got their title fairly quickly. But fairly quickly here is still about a year. Just so you know, that is for pre-sales, right? And it's similar process for resale, but we're not talking about that in this video, so we can touch on that later. If you're interested, leave me a comment below. So we received our titles, and there were many people who used the developers' lawyers who didn't. So now I don't know their situation, so I'm not sure if there was some paperwork missing from the buyer's side, or was it just the fact that they used the developers' lawyers. I'm not sure. However, I'm drawing my conclusions in that the $5,000 that I spent on the lawyers was money really well spent, and we had our title in hand, and here in Mexico that is extremely, extremely important. So let's move on. And when the HOA was formed in the building, there were so many different characters in the building, so many different opinions. I call it the HOA drama. And I think if you are considering buying here, you should really, really think about that, and think about what type of buyers are purchasing in the building. And you know, one thing you can hope for is that most of the people are on the same page. So whether most are investors, and there will be short-term rentals, most are going to be happy with that. In Vallarta as a whole, there are not very many restrictions in terms of short-term rentals, although HOAs can come in and you know, if most people vote on the restriction, it could happen. So if you are buying a property that is a rental property, you should definitely see who are the other people purchasing into that building. Do your best to research it. And if vice versa, if you're someone who's looking to purchase a retirement home and you want to have a community of, you know, same people kind of coming here for the for the winter season and enjoying the sunshine. So you should definitely check into that as well to make sure that that will likely be the case. Now, that is the research that we as buyers need to do. And I didn't do that research. I just jumped in, I was excited. Even though I knew all this information, I still didn't do it. So I wanted to remind anyone who's looking for a property out there to really do that research. HOA drama started. We were promised the HOA fee to be $2.50 per square meter per month. I get that question all the time. And it ended up being $7.50 US per month per square meter. So it's a drastic difference. Again, when you're purchasing into a property, unfortunately, if it's a pre-sale, there's no way of knowing. It will really truly depend on the cost of services at the time of your possession, the type of contractors your HOA hires, and so many other things. So please keep that in mind, that your expenses could be so much higher than what you have anticipated. The next part of the drama, the low season came with the rain and there was a lot of leaks in the buildings. The developer wasn't addressing some of them, he did address the others, and there was just so many people just going at it, and at the time it was super stressful. So that is something that I want you to prepare yourself for if you are buying into an HOA property here. This can happen. The leaks will happen because the weather in Vallarta is extremely harsh. And yes, it absolutely is not sometimes even the fact that the construction is faulty. It's just the fact that the rains are so heavy and the winds are so heavy that leaks happen. And they happen way more than, for example, what I've experienced back in Vancouver, where it like rained literally every single day. It's just different. And this is a tip for you. If you're purchasing a property and you're worried about the leaks, make sure that, especially if it's a property on the ocean facing side, so that would be the west side, in my experience, this is where most of the leaks happen. Now, I was lucky enough, didn't know this, but we bought a property because I love mountain views more than the ocean views. We bought a property on the mountain view side, and knock on wood, we hadn't had any issues. But that's something to look out for. Our units were pretty much ready to go, so we were able to walk in and see them before we bought them. A lot of things I hear out there is people are unhappy because what was promised on renderings wasn't delivered. And absolutely, that is universal for all over the world, all over North America. I would say in Canada, it was the same thing. That was the number one thing I told my clients who wanted to buy pre-sale, is that what you see in the presentation center or renderings is not going to be the finished product, right? So you really need to be mindful of that and set your expectations at that. Then things started to go well. We had our title. I started to rent the property on Airbnb. Everything was fabulous until one day I got a note from our HOA team saying that we have no water or sewage. And that was crazy. So the water and sewage got cut off by the local authority, and the issue was, after a bit of digging, is that some bills weren't paid by the developer. There was so much conversation, so much drama. Lawyers were hired, contracts were trying to get understood, a lot more money spent on that. And in the end, we did end up having to pay the fee to reinstall our services 30 days later. What I've learned from that is when something happens here in Puerto Vallarta, this isn't Canada or US, and things are done very, very differently here. I think speaking to at least 5 professionals, no matter what, professionals we're talking, lawyers, contractors, what have you, at least 5, and then asking for an opinion of 3 to 5 locals on how would they go about solving a situation. That could be an invaluable advice and also wealth of knowledge, because things are done very differently here. And if we come in thinking that things are done here the same way as they are done in Canada, in my case, they're not. And for a good reason. It's not Canada, it's Mexico. So long story short on that part is, the 30 days without sewage or water, we still had to pay the fee. It was such a learning experience, you guys. I had to cancel the reservations, the Airbnb reservations. I was stressing out. I thought, oh my gosh, are they going to shut down my listing? Because with Airbnb, if you cancel more than 2 times or 3, and I had it all booked, it was in the high season. So if you cancel more than 3 times, you can lose your right to rent your property on Airbnb essentially, right? And I thought, oh my gosh, this is like one of my income sources. What am I going to do? But I also think that if you are someone who's going through something stressful, or, if you're thinking of purchasing a property here and you're like, oh my gosh, this is so scary. I think this is a reality of owning a business. I think that things can go wrong. I think that it's sometimes a reality of just owning your home. There's so many horror stories about the HOAs in the States that are giving you a bill for $100,000 for something, right? So there are so many stories out there, and I think being prepared and understanding that things can happen, but we are in control of how we feel and how we deal with them is of utmost importance. So after a couple of days, I removed myself from the drama of the HOA, and I decided that I will just everything is figure outable, right? So, and it did. Everything kind of figured itself out after 30 days. We did end up having to pay for it, but you know what? It's fine. So I guess with all of those things said, I know that my experience may not have been as drastic as some others out there. I know there are some people who I feel deeply for, who have given their money to a presentation center, who promised them the construction will start, and it never started for 2 years, and they've given all their money and there's no recourse. I know that my situation is not as dramatic, but I did want to share it with you, and in the end, I wanted to sum it up with this. I believe for the right person who is purchasing a property here in Vallarta, who is prepared and understands what it is like to own a property here, I think it's the best decision you could make. Have things happened? Yes, I own 2 other properties, and trust me, if you're interested, I'll tell you most stories. Things are always going to happen. I've had some crazy things happen with other property, but in the end, is it worth it? To me, 100%. It is 100% worth it to me, because I could have never purchased a property for $200,000 in Vancouver, Canada, 2 blocks away from the beach, where I could freely rent it on Airbnb, where the property appreciated in value, where I go and enjoy it so much, me and my family. And so to me personally, 100% this journey is worth it. But I think one of the most important things a buyer can do is to do their research, to not just leave it up to a realtor or a developer of all people, because remember, and again, nothing against developers here, I actually think they're some of the most hardworking people out there, but it's a business they're running and they're protecting their interests. Me as a buyer, when I go in to give them that money, I need to protect my interests, and I need to find all of the information I could find out there, and all of the support of the professionals who I can trust to help me make that transaction a success. Then I can enjoy my property. It will never be 100% rainbows and unicorns, but I will be prepared, I will know what to expect, and in the end, I'll just have so much joy in my life. So I truly hope this video is helpful, you guys. This is not the content I usually post. If you like it, let me know in the comments below if I should make more of these types of videos. Also, I've created a whole bunch of free resources for you guys. They're in the description below. A pre-sale guide, there is also a financing guide. So if you're someone who isn't scared by this story, and you shouldn't be, I think it's just, you should be aware of what can happen. You can check out those free resources. I also have a free newsletter you can be a part of, where I share my day-to-day, some of the good opportunities, all the things. So if you are curious, check out the resources in the description below. Thanks so much for watching until the very end, and I'll see you in the next video.